the unnamed narrator is we find out has just been dumped, and he was in a relationship for a year, a boyfriend. He's happily married and has two children, but he met someone and he fell in love, and he was trying to balance it all, and it was by turns working and not working for the better part of a year, and then he gets dumped. And now he is a middle-aged person who has never had his heart broken, and he essentially becomes a 17-year-old. And but he has the intelligence and the maturity of a middle-aged person. And so he doesn't, he's fighting this like really, uh, uh, what's the word? Um, Visceral reaction to pain, but he's trying to analyze it as it's happening. So a 17-year-old who has their heart broken isn't going to be like, well, what's happening to me chemically? I don't understand. And he is, because he's a public health researcher. He's a scientist. So he's trying to understand why this is happening to him, and he's trying to intellectualize his way out of the pain. And in the process, I'm telling the reader about this relationship. So with each letter, we learn more about how this relationship came to be and why it ended and what his thoughts are. I would like to add that I was inspired in a way by something George Michael said, but I didn't know it because I didn't hear it until after I'd already finished the book. So the book is done. It's at the press. I already have the galleys. And then I watched this interview with George Michael, um, in which he says he's bemoaning the state of gay culture and how it's become all about parties and drugs. And this is in the early 90s, I think, or late 90s. And he's being a little bit judgmental, but then he also says, gay people, we're fascinating people. Like we gravitate towards the arts and culture because we are told from an early age that this pillar of society that we should take for granted, boy meets girl makes baby, doesn't apply. Like that isn't our life. So if you are able to question that, then suddenly you think, wait a second, this is foundational to society, and they were wrong because that's not me. I don't fit into this paradigm. What else are they wrong about? What else should I be questioning? And so that is, in my opinion, where a lot of art, and I agree with him, comes from. It's this constant questioning and this curiosity and this examination of society. And so, um, in a way, that's what I wanted. I'm not making in this book a case for polyamory. I think I'm making a case for questioning why we behave as we do and why we kind of succumb to the expectations that society puts out there. The setup here is not adultery, it's polyamory. So it's this idea that this relationship could withstand the partners having other relationships, not just sex, you know. Um, and I've always been fascinated by this notion that what you just said, that I imagine that's the Laura Linney character, that people have affairs all the time. And it's almost like, yeah, we accept it and we criticize it, and it's bad. It's just one of the Ten Commandments, I think. And but we also are like, that's life. And but what if it wasn't something shameful? Like, what if you met someone and you're perfectly happy and married, and then you said to your partner, you know, I kind of fell in love with my coworker. I didn't see it coming, but now I'm in love with her. And what do you think? And I was raised to believe that, you know, that is completely wrong. That is preposterous. And you should be devoted to one person your entire life for as long as possible. In fact, I would go even further to say that I was raised in an environment by people who believed even if it's horrible, you stick it out. Like, even if it's horrible, you stick it out. And the longer you stick it out, the more you should stick it out, right? Because now, look, you put up with 40 years of misery, put up with the last 10 or 20. And I've always believed that. And And along with that, I think comes this idea that love is scarce. And so um, I have it. This is mine, and there's no abundance here. Like this is where it fits in this lane, and it's bidirectional between me and this one human. And I think polyamory supposes this idea that like, I love my partner, and they are happier when they also have this other person in their lives. How do I feel about that? Now, I'll be quite honest with you. I'm a jealous person who doesn't feel good about that. But I know people who do and who are doing it well, and I don't see the rupture of society or of a family or of a human that I was told. It takes a certain kind of person. But like, you know, I I think there is something aspirational or admirable about being honest about your feelings. And I'm just always impressed and curious about people who, and if not deconstruct, at least question in a sort of active way what's expected of them. And so polyamory to me is like this radical idea, but by the way, has been around forever. Um, and but what if it wasn't something shameful? That's what I was thinking. Like, what if it was something that you could discuss openly? That's the thing is, I'm gay, and I lived with a lot of shame and fear as a young person, and I can't abide by that in my adulthood. To me, whenever that someone suggests that hiding or keeping something to yourself is wiser in this situation, don't tell your wife you're having the affair. Just do it on that. That makes me uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, what if instead of doing that, you just had an open and honest relationship and you told people how you felt and you worked it out? That was in a way what I was curious. It was one of the many things I was trying to talk about in the book. But as George Michael said, it wasn't just about promoting this idea of an unconventional romantic relationship. It was about the very questioning of what we were told is normal and not normal. The narrator, what he goes through is the husband is aware all the time, the entire time. Like he comes home for day one and says, "Hi, I met someone," and it's kind of like sexual. Okay, well, have fun and do this and this. You know the rules. And and then when it gets serious, he then wants to tell his kids, and that's part of the book too, is talking to his children about it. And he can't seem to tell his family, his parents. And that's another thread in the book, is about not being able to have that conversation. And again, it's an exploration of past and future. It's really that divide where like as a society, are we more open-minded, or is it just when you're young, you're always going to be more open-minded? Or so it's him kind of struggling with that, trying to please people in his life, but in the process, what does he lose in order to please them? I intentionally wanted to leave it open-ended, intentionally wanted um, the anxiety in the book, because this is the first book or any piece of writing I've done where the narrator talks, his mental health is front and center. He has a very strong relationship with his therapist. He has two therapists in the book because he's that anxious, and they don't know about each other, the two therapists. And so he is writing, he's processing this as he goes. And so that anxiety runs all the way through to the end. Could this work? I believe it could work, he thinks. I believe, I'm hopeful. He just describes himself as a hopeful pessimist. So he knows the likelihood is low that it could work, but that it would work because society has to be on board for this to truly, truly work. He could be in this situation for the rest of his life, for 80 years, until the day he dies, but never know a successful, like Cuba is still there, right? Cuba exists and people, have lives and they live and they die and they get married and they cry and they get divorced. Like it's all there. But what would it be like if the US lifted the embargo? Like what if we just said, you know what? We don't, that's not our cup of tea. We're not communists or socialists, but let them be them. And the embargo was lifted. We might find that Cuba is the perfect example of a socialism that works. We don't know. We'll never know because of that embargo. So in that same way, I think this guy is like, okay, I'm willing to be uncomfortable in society in order to be happy, but I will never know full happiness because of that discomfort.